Good afternoon, everybody. My name's James Pickering. I'm Sales Director in Jigsaw 24. I am your host today for the second of three live webinars that we've been running, based around Mac in business and focused particularly on the Mac user experience. I'm joined by a couple of three colleagues of mine today. Jack Hollister, who's our technical lead in end user computing solutions. Richard Poth, a professional development consultant for Jigsaw, also with an Apple professional learning badge attached to his name, and also Richard Brown-Martin, who's another professional development consultant. The guys are going to take you through a number of slides and interactions today. The title of this session is Supporting Your Mac Users. The prior session we had, I won't go through the details of that just now. We can make that available to you. We've got a number of people on today who were on the first session and are now on the, a number of people who were on the first session and are on the second session, and a number of new people who missed the first session. So if any of the new people joining today would like a copy of the first session, which was effectively called or entitled Moving to Mac, and then we can deliver that to you via email, no problem at all. As I say, this is the second in a series of three, the third being next week, 28th of June at 3 p.m, entitled Delivering the Ultimate User Experience. So please join that session as well. Of course, we will make those recordings available to you afterwards if you're unable to make it, but if you'd like to, then we'd be more than welcome to have you. One other thing to mention before I hand over to my colleagues, we are having an in-person session Thursday the 14th of July, 3 o'clock onwards in central London. It will be in Soho. We're just finalising the details of the venue, but again, keep an eye out for that on our socials and our website, and also through your account management team. We'll be inviting you. But a date for your diary, 14th of July. Feel free to come and join us in town and have a beer with us afterwards if the sun's shining. I'll switch my camera off in a second and hand over to Jack, Richard, and Richard. Feel free to ask questions. There's a Q&A slot down in Zoom that you can see, and we can pick that up at the end. We're trying to make this session interactive. However, we are quite limited for time. So if you could stick Q&A in the questions in the Q&A section, and we can pick them up, we can relay those to the presenters as they're speaking. Okay, over to you guys. Have an enjoyable afternoon, and I'll speak again at the end. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, James. Welcome, everyone. My name's Richard Poth. Like James said, I'm a professional development consultant for Jigsaw 24, and I currently work with a lot of customers, particularly education customers, where I'm working in the schools. I'm going to go through a few things at the end of the webinar after Jack has done his presentation. So I'm going to, today we're going to talk about that transition of Mac and what it looks like in the workplace. So I'm going to hand over to Jack, who's going to go through that process and get him to talk about that whole idea of what happens with Mac in the workplace. Thanks, Mac. Thanks, Jack.
Yeah. So I suppose the key aspect of implementing Apple technology in general is all around actually understanding what's happening from a technical point of view, what's happening from an operation point of view, and what's happening for those end users themselves. And I think when you map out that entire journey from perhaps a greenfield estate where Mac is a new technology existing in what is maybe a predominantly Microsoft estate, or perhaps it's more of a brownfield site where we're dealing with like pockets of Mac citizens dotted around the organisation that perhaps are under management or may be sitting in an unmanaged state. And when we look at that journey from sort of start to finish, this is how we sort of map out that full Apple into enterprise from zero to hero for IT and for the users. And that starts with looking at things like for our larger customers, proof of concepts, proof of values, being able to run a controlled estate, identifying where those key areas are, moving into, once that's completed, then moving into that wider discovery piece, gap analysis, looking at what changes perhaps are needed across the environment, and then identifying what the tools are, implementing those, and then rolling them out to the end users and to the IT teams. But if we zoom in on that a little bit, so if we have a look at the first step, which is proof of concept, which predominantly larger enterprises, perhaps this is more geared towards actually looking at, well, before we roll out a large estate of Macs, especially given the governance, the infrastructure, the integrations that exist within enterprise businesses, being able to focus on the Mac experience and actually look at what those key areas are that are needed for success. So doing a level of discovery as to what the MVP is to get Mac up and running within the business. Looking at what those success criteria are. Is this something that's perhaps coming in from a director level because Mac as choice is something being presented, or perhaps this is you're seeing this within your employees that are asking to use a Mac, and that's perhaps why the organisation is moving towards. So something that Jigsaw works alongside enterprises is actually managing and supporting that proof of concept for that period, because it may be at a time within the organisation that within the operations team that there isn't a Mac SME, or there isn't enough of a Mac support capability to run alongside the Windows team to begin with. And that's where Jigsaw can sort of help and guide that during the POC. Having access to our TDAs that are our Mac champions that have got a deep level of understanding, that be able to guide organisations through some of those sort of tricky decisions that come in when putting in a brand new technology. But sort of moving on from that POC piece, when we start looking at what does this mean for the wider business, so doing that deeper level of discovery, whether that's working alongside Apple themselves or other vendors, or working with Jigsaw to do those in-depth technical dives, looking at how security is going to be achieved on an organisation device that may sit in the hands of someone in HR, it may sit in the hands of someone in sales, or someone on the road. How do we ensure that the security of that device ticks the box for the end user, but also for your security teams? How's identity being managed? Are we integrating this into things such as Microsoft Azure, Active Directory, Okta? The technology space around identity for Mac has moved on dramatically, even more so in the last year, with more and more integration sort of coming in, with some of the leading MDM providers being able to give you a similar login experience as you would on your Windows device, being able to use your Microsoft credentials, you're using multi-factor authentication to be able to log on to the Mac, and actually change that Apple login experience to be one that would sit well within a sort of Microsoft enterprise environment. Looking at how applications are being deployed, what applications are required for the Mac estate. Is this a like for like? Are we looking at productivity applications? Is there perhaps any areas that other apps would need to be brought in? And then also that end user experience. If we're going to be rolling out Mac as a technology, what is that deployment experience going to be like? Are we looking at doing zero touch, so sending that cellophane wrap box to that end user so they take it out, they go through that whole Apple experience? Or are we going a step further, looking at guided workflows to guide them through setting up things like VPN, 365? There's a lot of layers that are possible with Apple and with macOS. So next step on, obviously, once that discovery is done, another key area to consider is doing that gap analysis. It may be that Mac's already existing within the estate. It may be that they've got security tooling that are just put on there because in order to just get them working within the organisation, you've put on an endpoint security tool. Perhaps that isn't the right tool when scaling that up to across the whole business, or if you used to offer choice. So really, it's important to identify where perhaps some of the tooling and services could be swapped out for other vendors that perhaps have a more sort of Apple, or have a higher level of Apple support, especially in the security space, because it's such a core area where if macOS support isn't kept up to date, you could end up with a situation where certain security applications are holding back the native security capabilities of Apple devices. And something that Jigsaw can also do here is looking at how the service and support is run. So it may be that we're able to help you through sort of getting your IT support team up and running, being a resolver group within that team, providing training for the operations teams to help grow your Mac capabilities internally, as well as then being able to have a Jigsaw as that escalation point. So once the discovery and sort of your gap analysis, and you looked at the many sort of key areas across the estate, the next sort of phase for making sure it's a success is actually building that platform. So looking at what MDM vendors, you've got the likes of Jamf that have their Apple focused MDM, you have Microsoft Intune that have some support for Mac devices, and you've got a couple of other MDM vendors that are now sitting in this space. But I think the important thing is looking at what do you need as an organization, what sort of management level do you require, and then choosing the MDM that fits to that, keeping in mind that the integrations that sit across different MDMs. So if we look at Jamf Pro, for example, has got full integration into Microsoft, allowing things like conditional access, Azure Active Directory, that although it's the third-party MDM to Microsoft, it still integrates into that enterprise environment. And again, looking at those other applications, so your security vendors, and how that security technology is going to be implemented, whether that's using CIS benchmarks to perform device hardening, or whether you need to adhere to Cyber Essentials. All that can be leveraged through the MDM, and this is sort of the key point of putting that all together. So the implementation. So at this point during your journey, where you understand what your organisation requires, you've highlighted the gaps that have been closed around application support. An MDM tool has been chosen, and now it's around developing and setting that up. And this is something that, again, the Jigsaw could work alongside your teams for configuring, whether that's setting up those zero-touch deployment workflow, setting up migration options to move you from another MDM to your future MDM for Mac within the organisation, as well as sort of perhaps doing those enterprise integrations that we've mentioned, especially if Mac's existing within a large corporate. Those are going to be key for Mac being a success, because we want to be able to see that be an equal citizen to the Microsoft devices within the estate. And then the final piece is deployment. So whether we're migrating an existing estate under management, whether we're doing zero touch, sending those cellophane wrap devices to the end users within their homes, or perhaps it's a tech bar where we a more personal approach, being able to guide users doing one-to-one sessions around setting up the Mac device, and also perhaps swapping out if we're doing something as Mac as choice and your employees are moving over to Mac from Windows. A great opportunity there to control that whole process end to end with tech bars. We mentioned in the last session Apple Business Manager and being able to do supervised controlled enrollments with newly purchased devices. If perhaps you've got parts of the estate where they've just been purchased by departments that just went on Amazon, went to a generic product company to buy that device that isn't sitting in ABM, this is a great time to look at sort of device refresh, looking at things like AFS to get a return on residual value for leasing your hardware. Because at this point, when you're deploying that device, it goes through that Apple Business Manager enrollment cycle, and it allows you to bring those sort of non-compliant, unsupervised devices under full management. And we sort of spoke a lot there around the technology, the applications, and the management side. But another key point in having a successful sort of Mac transition is the training aspect. So looking at providing end user with training, as well as your IT operation teams. Now, Rich, I don't know if you wanted to sort of comment there on the end user training and the IT.
We're going to hand over to Richard Brown Martin now, and Richard's going to go through some of those training programs that we do offer Richard, I'll let you introduce yourself. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Right. Well, hopefully you can now see my slides. And to introduce myself, well, here's the obligatory introduction to me slide. So just a little bit of my background. I have been a Mac user for many years. And in that time, I've gone through delivering training to the general public in terms of productivity apps, to then working as an IT administrator, and beyond that, teaching people how to administer IT. I'm now working at Jigsaw as a professional development consultant, and essentially my job is creating and delivering new training programs for end users and IT professionals. So importantly, all the work that I do is predicated on one simple thing. You can give people the best tools. That could be the most expensive Mac out there. That could be a really expensive MDM solution. Could be, anything. But if they don't know how to use it, they can't fulfill their potential. And more importantly, those tools that as a decision maker you provided them, they're just going to go to waste. So clearly training and making sure that people have the ability to utilize the tools they're provided is super important. So we have a new macOS productivity offering, which myself and Richard Poth are working on, which will be coming later this year. We're going to be rolling this out internally, but also offering it up to all of our customers should they want to improve the productivity for end users. And that can be anyone, but all manner of different job roles. So that's going to cover kind of getting the most out of the built-in features of the Mac. The Mac comes with a whole ton of productivity features, albeit, organizing yourself, organizing your workflows, understanding how to get the most out of all the shortcuts, set up some additional automations, all sorts of things like that. So there's loads in macOS that a lot of people aren't aware of. As I say, Apple have a great set of productivity apps. So the presentation I'm showing you is done with Apple's Keynote. Apple also have Pages and Numbers. So those are great alternatives to the Microsoft tools that a lot of organizations use. Whether they're right for every organization, well, you're not going to know until you've had some training on them and understand what the differences are, what they can all do. Now, this training, when it does come, is going to be offered in a number of different formats. We are going to be able to offer one-to-one productivity training with one of our trainers. That's going to allow people to really get in there, ask questions. We'll also have group productivity training, so seminars, potentially in-person little gatherings where people can come, bring their Mac along, and we'll go through a bit of a course and then have a bit of time to work with people in person. But the big one that we're really excited about is we're going to have a full online training course for end user productivity. And one of the big reasons that we're keen to develop this as a course is we want to improve actually internally our own onboarding. So we give a Mac to everyone who joins Jigsaw. We want to make sure that they know how to use it, because if we can be our best, then we can help you to do your best as well. Now, in terms of technical training, as Jack said, we need to make sure that the people who are powering your Mac deployment, the engineers, your internal IT, they are able to support these new devices which you're adding to your estate. So we offer a macOS Support Basics training course. That is a one-day course. It basically goes over all the essentials for administrators. It's good for your first line, and it builds their key macOS essential skills, all the things that perhaps they wouldn't have come across in the Windows world. And we aim it to transition their skills as quickly as possible, and also empower them to really get in there because a lot of IT professionals, particularly if they've come up through the CompTIA and the traditional route into computer administration, they find the Mac world a little bit intimidating. Now, building on that, we then have the macOS Support Essentials. So that is a 4-day group course. We run that periodically, and we can sign people up to that, or we can deliver it to a group from a particular organization should they want it. That offers more in-depth training for macOS administrators and support engineers. It follows the macOS Support Essentials syllabus, so that is a Apple's own training program. If you complete our training, you can then go on and take the Apple macOS Support Professionals exam. Here is a picture of me having completed my exam. So believe me, I do know what I'm on about with this. But yeah, so you can send your people and they will pass. Apple, their attitude to training up until recently has been, you buy the book, you study the book, but Jigsaw think that there's a better way, and that is to have someone actually go through this stuff and teach your IT departments. Now, MDMs are obviously a very important thing, and the biggest MDM that we tend to see on the Mac is Jamf. And so, as it said in the in my introduction slide, I am what's called a Jamf integrator. So I have been on training with Jamf and am qualified by them to wear this fetching purple jumper and deliver their official training. So the Jamf Quick Start is our version of Jamf's official training. We typically do this when you set up your Jamf Pro server so that your engineers know exactly what to do with it. They can more or less get stuck in straight away and start working with Jamf Pro. Or if they're if you're doing your engineering with Jigsaw, this is a great thing to do so that your engineers know how to talk to the Jigsaw engineers and collaborate with them to do the implementation in a way that not only is great because you get all the expertise from a Jigsaw engineer, but also your engineers will be able to take that to the next level and maintain it moving forwards. So that's either a half day if you're deploying to an iOS estate, 2 half days if you're deploying to a macOS estate, or you can do both, and some organizations do. Now, for educational customers, they don't always want to use Jamf Pro, so we offer a similar training package for Jamf School. We call it the Jamf School Quick Start. That is a half-day group course, and it covers everything that an engineer would need to know in order to take the implementation that Jigsaw's engineers have put together in Jamf School and to take it forward and continue maintaining it, continue growing it. Now, in the Jamf, in the macOS world, there are 2 qualifications that we look for. So when Jigsaw goes out to hire new engineers, we look for engineers with either the Jamf 200 course or the Jamf 300. These are the gold standard in Apple technical training because they don't just teach you to be a Jamf MDM engineer, but also to be a brilliant Apple engineer. And we've developed our own courses which get you ready to take on Jamf. So the Jamf Tech and Jamf Admin courses are 3-day courses. You can send your engineers on. It's all group training, and we will take them through everything they will need to know in order to administer Jamf Pro and also get them ready for those exams should they decide that they want to take their career to that next level. We've also found that it's really important for people who perhaps run service desks, for managers and people in other security related departments to have an idea of what's going on with Jamf Pro. And so we encourage people from all different places, managers, not just those admins who are going to be directly building out the Mac infrastructure to come on these courses. And if people do go on to take the Jamf 200, we've run it internally, the Jamf Tech training, several times, and every engineer that has taken our Jamf Tech course so far has passed the Jamf 200 course. Now, finally, we can offer you bespoke training to meet your needs. So we can build out a webinar for you, which will cover various training topics that might be useful. We can also offer training for Apple services, products, and Microsoft products, as well as coaching for end users and engineers. So we can really design a training solution around you should the off-the-shelf packages that we have not entirely fit your needs. To give you an example, for one large school, we actually put together a training package all around Apple School Manager, and they have a large collection of iPads which needed to be added into Apple School Manager, so we delivered training for everyone in the school who was going to be responsible for doing that. And that's everything I have to tell you about how we do training at Jigsaw 24. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Richard. Really appreciate your time to go through that. That was really great. So I'd like to just before we aim to finish soon, I'd just like to talk to you about something that I deal with, because obviously Richard and we work in the same team with our training, and a lot of the stuff that I do is with education, but we're trying to work with the corporate sector as well. And we are looking at, we deal with something called the Leading Innovation Program. So with the Leading Innovation Program, this is a program that we talk to schools, and we sit there and we go through different workshops with them to create a sustainable plan, ultimately coming up with a professional learning plan that will go through the needs for what they want to deliver with the school or the learning establishment. And this would cater for universities, colleges, but we were also potentially, this could look at how we could actually get this into the corporate sector as well. So we would start with creating a vision. So we would sit down in a workshop, we would talk to the relevant people, and we would create and look at what their vision is for their for the school or the establishment that we're talking with. The leadership briefing is where we would show what the potential is. So many of the things that like Jack and Richard have been talking today, we could demo that. We can show what the potential is with using this kind of the Apple equipment. Planning essentials, that's where we look at the strategic plan. Very similar to what Jack was talking about today, but from an education point of view, this was. Learning technology audits is where we can offer ways where you can the establishment can audit areas of skill. So it might be in a school, it would potentially be teachers and students, but that could be the staff of a company as well. Where are they at with their level in terms of the skill level of using an Apple Mac or an iPad or whatever Apple product they're using. Professional services plan is the plans that we can offer to service and support the user experience. Again, very similar to what Jack has been talking about. The professional learning plan itself, this is where and that's probably the biggest part in terms of what we can offer in terms of coaching programs and mentoring and sitting down. And Richard already talked about the kind of coaching programs they offer from a technical point of view, but we can also offer coaching programs on how the devices can be used within the workplace as well. And then we review it. We'll look at the review cycle, and this is why it's a sustainable plan. We talk about how we can sit there and review what you've actually done with an impact review. The sustainable finance plan is when we're working with what the best financial solution is. And this is specifically really for schools and colleges and universities on what the best financial plan is. So that's our Lead and Innovation program. It's a program that I deal with a lot, but we'd like to maybe explore how we could potentially use that further in the corporate sector as well. So that's Jack. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we close?
I'd probably say that the key continuing topic throughout all of that is all around user experience, because as we said before, the idea of Mac as choice, people wanting to use a Mac in the workplace is because they've enjoyed using it in their personal lives, or perhaps in their study lives when they went through college, university. When they use it in the home, that Mac experience is why they enjoy using that device. So when it comes to using that Mac in the workplace, it's really important that all those decisions that are put together to put a macOS device alongside a Windows device is not to disrupt the Apple experience, because that's the sort of key catalyst to Mac being a success with an enterprise. So always look to acknowledge sort of what the user requirements are, getting feedback. A lot of the tools we spoke about are also ways of gaining and gathering those feedback from the different user groups within the estate, and then using that to feed through to improve and build the service over time. Otherwise, that's all from me.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Our next webinar is where we're going to be showing you a lot of that in the delivering of the ultimate user experience, and how we can give tips and ideas on that, on how you can use the Mac. James.
Yeah, okay, thank you, folks. Well, you've done a perfect wrap-up, Richard. I was going to talk about exactly that. The next webinar focuses entirely on getting the most out of the Mac and delivering the ultimate user experience. That was almost like we rehearsed, wasn't it? Thanks, everyone, for joining. The next webinar, as Richard said, is next week, the 28th at 3 p.m. We will send out an email follow-up to this session and make the recording available if you'd like it. However, if not, please do join next week. And put the date in your diary of the 14th of July if you're available to come and meet us for a more in-person or an in-person, a bit more hands-on session in central London, Soho, location TBC. However, during this session, I've had a few emails around that, so we are almost there in revealing the location, somewhere quite nice in the city or in town. Thanks very much. Thanks to all the presenters, Richard, Jack, Honor, thanks for doing the background stuff. I'm meant to ask any questions. Sorry, people, before we go, any questions? I think on a couple of questions we've had were wanted answering independently, so we'll do that discreetly rather than broadcast to the group. But I'm assuming, therefore, no other questions from the group.
No, there's been none come through.
Okay, good. Any questions, anybody? We'll circulate our contact details afterwards, but please, by all means, drop us an email, give us a call, and we'll deal with it from there. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.